Hello, everyone. This is the Crimson Cure. You to the Crimson Tower, a place where we keep a feminine foot on the neck of the gynocracy, feminism, and black male misandry. So go ahead, pull up a chair, stay a while, and listen. Hey, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel. We're going to go ahead and get right on into the topic, but first, a word from our sponsor.
This is A-Game, fast-acting, long-lasting, with no side effects.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crimson Cure. And today we have a very special topic for you guys, and we also have a special guest. So I really just want to, as usual, jump right into it with you. What we're going to be talking about today and for the weeks going forward is a wonderful, comprehensive concept called the 10 life values. Now, you may be asking yourself, what are the 10 life values? What is Crimson Cure talking about? Well, what I'm talking about is this really dynamic thing, concept, program, if you will, that was conceptualized by Dr. Spencer Holman. And you guys in my chat room might know him as Father's Time. Yes, the same person who sponsors us with A-Game. So this is a man who has been doing a tremendous amount of work for the Black community at large and for Black men specifically. And so we're going to talk about this dynamic thing called the 10 life values, and we're going to introduce it to you. And as I said, we're going to talk about this extensively for the weeks going forward. And the reason why I wanted to bring this to you guys is because not only do I think that this will help each individual person that is within the sound of my voice in some way, shape, or form, but also because we have such a dysfunctional environment that most of us grow up in. For 2 years, my content has been nothing but me going after these dysfunctions and talking about them at length. And so I've spent a lot of time talking about what we shouldn't do and the pitfalls of the things that we do and the things that we are taught and what we're thinking. But as I've said on my channel before, you don't take something out of someone's hand without putting something into their hand, which is more valuable than what you take from them, or else they go back to that thing, even if that thing is dysfunctional. So without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest, whose name is Dr. Michelle Knights. She's worked with Dr. Holman for quite a number of years. So I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about her, and then we can go right into the 10 life values. So, hey, Dr. Michelle, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, Kendra. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you this evening?
Oh, I'm terrific. And I'm so delighted to be here with you.
I'm delighted to have you.
Oh, thanks. I've been looking at the body of your work and the impact you're making. And it's a joy to come on and talk with you about ways to bring in some more information to your audience. And I'm equally delighted to represent Dr. Holman with the 10 life values. I actually encountered him about 3 years ago as he was doing some research, and he was looking for someone to work on a product he created, which is A-Game. And he was just concluding a 3-year testing of A-Game in the marketplace. And for those of you who don't know yet what A-Game is, it's an all-natural herbal solution for men, formulated really from Dr. Holman, but through the lens of the 10 life values. And A-Game is the proud sponsor of the Crimson Cure show, and we're truly happy to be working with Kendra.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm glad you mentioned A-Game. Listen, everybody, we're not playing. A-Game is more than just a product to sell you guys. When I tell you to do yourselves a favor by clicking that link, I really mean that, because that is part of, as Dr. Michelle just mentioned, part of the concept of the 10 life values, which would be health. So just wanted to interject and let them know that it is not just any old supplement that you might get. It really helps to address some things that may be going on with you health-wise. It's just for men. So I'm a little bit jelly that women don't have an A game for women, but that's okay.
It's coming. It's coming.
I'll be one of the first ones in line when it does. I'll be in line.
Oh, that's so awesome. And so this A game product is well within the 10 life values. So what are the 10 life values? They are a really comprehensive, essential part of looking at your life. So there are these components of your life organized into a success system. And what are these components? So the first is spiritual, then health, and that's where A game fits. And you see health comes right after spiritual. So it's really high on the priority. And that's why A game is really critical in incorporating into your life if you want to have really good overall health and wellness. But again, spiritual, health, family, appearance, dwelling, mobility, education, profession, leisure, and wealth. Those are the 10 life values. And we'll get more into what they are as we continue this conversation in the weeks coming when Kendra does more of these talks in her series. But when I talked with Dr. Holman initially, he was sharing with me that, he was finishing his PhD and his dissertation work was on these 10 life values that I just named. And every one of them resonated with me because my work has been working with families and Black men, Black women, and children primarily. A lot of my research has been with children, but it's really embedded in the context of family. And so when he shared all of this, immediately the light bulbs were going off, and I thought, wow, what a powerful set of tools and processes that you can offer to a family and allow them to organize and manage their lives better. And so it was really easy to say yes to him when he invited me to be part of the mission, the work that he embarked upon. And this work that he's been doing has been ongoing for over 20 years. And his work has been with men through the Fatherhood Academy in the Father's Time frame of his work. And so when I saw that there was such great alignment to what I did and what I knew I could bring something to the table of value, as well as be able to expand and implement the work of the 10 life values. And so I'm truly blessed to be here talking with you about it, Kendra.
Yeah, definitely. And I share that sentiment with it being easy to say yes to the mission and yes to what was going on, because for 2 years now, maybe a little bit over 2 years, my channel's been going, and Father's Time was pretty much a day one of mine. I would see him in the chat room periodically, and the thing that was like, oh, here comes Father's Time, is because he would come and support, he would chat, and then he would monetarily contribute. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. What I'm saying? He was one of my contributors early on. And it was only until maybe a few months ago, maybe towards the end of the summer, when he approached me for the sponsorship with A Game on my channel. And I was actually surprised. I'm like, okay, why me? My channel, especially it's a supplement for men. Why would it be for me? And once he started explaining what his track record has been in terms of the help and the work that he has done in the Black community and with Black men, I could understand it more because he was telling me about the 10 life values extensively. And he also mentioned something called the Black Star Project, which is a mission that is Chicago-based. So there's actually an office on the south side here, which is probably a 10 or 15 minute ride from me. And I was aware of the Black Star Project, but I hadn't been aware of his involvement with it. And he's been involved probably since around 2007 or so. So that has been a long body of work, especially with that program, which is specializes in mentorship of impoverished young Black boys, and a whole host of good work over there that they're doing. So once he explained what his life's work has been about, it was very easy, like you said, to say, yeah, because really, how could you not
Right.
agree to what this was, particularly the 10 life values? And I'm glad that you named them off, with spiritual being the first one, because even not only are these 10 principles or 10 values that you implement into your life, the numbering, the way that they're actually structured is just as important as they are individually. So when we start with spirituality or your spiritual value, we're really talking about starting with your inner self, who you are as a person, what your beliefs are, what your principles are on your own, which can be shaped by many things, but that is an anchor for us, who we are. Because many times when people don't have direction with who they are, they aren't able to organize their lives in a manner that's going to be productive and positive for them. And then right after who you are on the inside is who you are on the outside, in terms of your health, the health of your body, and even the health of your mind, which is, like we said, what A Game falls into. So those first two things are really two things that people struggle with, I think, the most: who they are, yep, and their health. Especially in the Black community, we have an obesity problem. We have a lot of issues with kidney failure and diabetes and high blood pressure, stress, all of these types of things that we typically deal with. So we have a health issue in our community, and then our families are broken many times. And that's the third value. So we got spiritual, we got health, we've got family. And we know we don't have a civilization, we don't have a community without families. Families are the building blocks of the entire society. And many of our families and homes are broken. And so we deal with that. And then our appearance. Many of us don't take a lot of pride in our appearances, or some of us take a false pride in our appearances, especially when we talk about our women who have an issue with their hair. Sometimes they have an issue with maybe colorism or things of that nature, which affect their appearances. And a lot of times they have a negative view of themselves based on their appearance, and thinking that they have to subscribe to a different standard of beauty in order to, be okay with their outside appearance, and dwelling our homes, our physical places that we live, the conditions of those places, whether those conditions are slovenly, impoverished, whether they're nice, that has a lot to bear on our psyche. If we have to go and then we have to come back to a place that is, graffiti ridden, and garbage is everywhere, and when you go into the building, the lights don't work and the security doors aren't secure, these things they take a toll on us. And I'm speaking to it from the standpoint of having lived in the poorer parts of Chicago. I never quite had to grow up in the projects, which is a different level of poverty, but I was around them, so I saw a lot of the conditions. And then mobility, a lot of us didn't have that, or it's not reliable, or we aren't mobile in terms of how we move in society. We're not mobile. So then there's the physical mobility, a car, whether or not you have reliable transportation. And then there's the mobility, in order to sort of make this a little bit more understandable. When I say mobility outside of transportation, think of upward mobility. Think of people who are upwardly mobile. Okay, these people are rising in their monetary gain, and so they're rising in society or where they're able to live, what they're able to do. And then we have education. Many of us suffer there as well. Some of us are able to get higher education and to get better education, but some of us are kind of stilted. I know I've told stories on my channel about the Chicago public school system and how I was almost failed by it. Even though I was an honor student, even though I attended all of my classes, I never, was truant or absent. And when I graduated with honors from 8th grade, and then when I got to high school, I realized I was behind. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. How is it possible that I'm behind? So, some of us don't have that issue. If we were able to not grow up in impoverished places and we grew up in more affluent places, we probably had an opportunity to get a better level and a better grade of education that actually helped us to have a better life potentially, which leads into profession. So I'm telling you guys, I'm layering it so that you can understand where it starts and where it ends. The order of them is important. It's just as important as each one of them, because education leads into profession, right? And then profession, when you have the profession you want and the profession that you've been going after, then you can do leisure. And then the accumulation of wealth. So wealth is actually the other anchor alongside or opposite of our spirituality. So I wanted to just illustrate for the audience the importance of the structure. So much thought has gone into the 10 life values. This isn't just 10 things scribbled down. This is really if you really want to think about it, sort of a blueprint for life, a blueprint for how to live your life.
It really is, and well stated. Great summary, because once people begin to see what the 10 life values are about, I think this new set of lens that people can put on in their lives help in so many ways. One, to examine all the things that you're currently going through. We tend to live a very knee-jerk reaction life. We're very reactionary. And so as life happens to us, we react to it. And envision the opposite of that. That would be the life of someone who is aware of the 10 life values and embraces it. And so now there is some planning, there's some organization and purpose, and definitely being intentional about each of these areas. And Kendra, you're so right. It's not haphazardly put together. And the hierarchy of these values are critical to understand. Once you start digging deeper into these 10 life values, it's such a beautiful set of tools, and the processes that you engage in to utilize these tools really set you on a path of success. So with spiritual being the first life value and wealth being the last, there's a really important relationship between those two. They are anchors. They anchor the system, and you'll see spiritual value throughout all the values. Spiritual is embedded in decision making around health, being diligent and being determined to do those things that are required for good health. And I can make that application in every one of the values. The other thing around health is that often there is a lot of ambiguity there for people. What people say they want for health and what they actually do tend to be two different things. I want good health, but I don't hesitate to go to the fast food place or to eat processed foods all the time, you know? Mm-hmm. So when we look at these life values, the thing that is pretty remarkable is that they are all the key areas of our lives. Nothing is missed, and there isn't an overlap. Now, wealth being the last, a lot of people lead with wealth, right? You hear people talk about, oh, get rich and do these things to become wealthy and live out the American dream. All of those things are important, but it's not what you lead with. Mm-hmm. Some people measure their significance and their value by how much money they make or how wealthy they are, their assets, their accumulation of assets. But when you realize what happened here within the 10 life value system, wealth is placed last purposefully, because when you have all of these other values in place, it flows through your life in a much better way to manifest and sustain wealth. And within the 10 life values, wealth is defined very broadly. So it's not just money. It's not just property and riches and so on. It's an accumulation of your assets. And so one of your assets could be that you have incredible knowledge. So wealth of knowledge. You have an abundance of love, right? So a wealth of love. Wealth is this level of abundance that we possess. And when we have this possession, we can do good things with it, and it becomes a currency. It's all a currency, just like each value is energy. It's a belief. And, you know, we talk about the 10 life values in terms of the component parts, but what is it overall? Again, it's all of these essential parts put into, organized in a success system. And the philosophy was created based on the study the creator did with looking at ancient wisdom, looking at God and what is put into us inherently. So we have value naturally, inherently built into us. How do we tap into that? How do we utilize it? And it's also understanding that this is something that got tested out. So when Dr. Holman realized that he needed to find a way himself to come out of his situation, Kendra, you talked about living in dire straits, living in situations that you knew you wanted to grow beyond. Well, that was his experience as well. Living in the ghettos in Harlem in New York, left there, went to California, in LA, and he always felt unsettled in his environment. He always felt like there was more that was required of him in life. And so he kept searching. He looked at the origins of man and the origins of civilization and ancient wisdom. And really, he was trying to save his life and organize himself to come out of a valueless environment. He saw people around him who didn't have value. He wasn't valued. And if you had value, you were a target. You were easily picked upon. So if you were doing well in school, that's a value. You could be bullied. You could be picked on. So not having value was something that, you know, created part of the culture in his environment. And he knew that while he didn't fit in, he was there for a purpose. He was there to see this and experience it and do something with it. And that's how he got the 10 life values to save his life. And then that change resulted in him allowing others to utilize the 10 life values so they can change themselves as well.
Exactly. And you said so many key things. One of the things that I want to zero in on that you said a little earlier, you said wealth is at the end, right?
Yes.
And you don't lead with wealth. And I'd like to sort of flesh that out and illustrate that, especially for the audience, why you don't lead with wealth and what happens when you don't have the other 9 values in place. Because so many times we hear about people hitting a lottery jackpot, 15 million, 30 million, $50 million. Okay. And within 2 or 3 years, that money is gone, which 50 million, 100 million, that's generational wealth. Especially when you know what to do with it. But because these people don't have any of the other values in order in any significant way, they aren't able to make the best of the wealth that they accumulate or won in this case, since I'm using lottery. And I'd also like to point out that there are 10 values. There is an 11th thing that is being taught that is not named, but each value teaches it, and that's discipline. Because you can't actually teach discipline, but what you can do is teach the things that make you disciplined. So when we have, like, for instance, a health value, and like you mentioned before, you said, I want good health, but I don't hesitate to go to the fast food place. Well, that's a lack of discipline. In order to get better health, you'll need discipline. You'll need to be able to say no to that flame broiled Whopper. You'll need to be able to say no to that Sonic shake with the Oreos on top or whatever. You'll need to be able to say, I can't do that, or I'm not going to, and I'm going to exercise and do the things that are good for my health. And so it is with all of the 10 life values, from spirituality to dwelling to family to mobility, all of them. It takes a certain amount of discipline in order to get them in order to have them,
Absolutely.
a significant part of your life.
Yeah, I totally agree. The discipline is actually woven throughout all of these values. And as we think about what is a value, right? It's a belief. It's a set of beliefs. It's energy. I was talking earlier about how it's transferable and we can exchange it as currency. When you have something of value, you can exchange it for something else of value. It could be monetary or it could be non-monetary. And that exchange there, it's inherently valuable to the people in the exchange process. And so when we think about beliefs and we think about values, it's a way of life. And that's what the 10 life values is. Once you start focusing on these on a daily basis, it becomes a way of life. It becomes how we live life, what guides our life and the decisions we make. Because you can easily point out somebody who is not guided by values in their decision making. And look, these are not about perfection. They are about excellence. They're about getting you on a path of success and excellence. So will we, even if as we implement these, will there be times when we falter? Yes. When we fail? Yes. And we fall down. But what the 10 life values does is it keeps it present in front of you, Kendra. It's like holding up a mirror to yourself every day. And none of these fall through the cracks. So there will be different times in your life when one of these values might be more dominant. So for students, education value will take precedence. That's where most of your time and energy will go. And again, when we value something, whatever we value, that's where our time, our energy, our resources will be prioritized because it's worthy to us. It's valuable. So once that student is finished with school, might begin a profession, then the energy shifts a little bit to developing that new career and that profession. But the 10 life values ensures that you don't forget these other important elements of your life. Without them, it's really easy. We've been there. We know people who have to just be so focused on your work that you forget about the needs of your family, tending to the overall growth and development and nurturance of every family member, because we're so tied up with the pressure and demands of work. Or it might be school. We're studying, burning the midnight oil, and we just forget about taking care of where we live. Our dwelling becomes a mess. It becomes chaotic, and we might not have focused in on that. Or, it might be that you are so busy making money that you forget about your spiritual development, or, really interacting and navigating your environment with your mobility value. So the 10 life values keeps all of these areas in front of you, so that nothing gets forgotten. Now, there are times when all of them are in balance, and you can focus on all of them equally. But regardless of where you are, the 10 life values is designed to meet you where you are. Whether you're just starting out, or you're frustrated with your current life events, or you're doing great and you just really want to go to the next level, the 10 life values will keep every area of your life in front of you, so that everything is developing and moving along with you on your life journey. It's so beautiful. I had to implement it in my life personally, and I've come to really cherish the 10 life values. And so I've even written a book based on the 10 life values. It's called The Courage to Continue. And I think it's really important at this time to address a lot of things that people are dealing with. It's a book about hope and examining our life experiences. And Dr. Holman is the person who's written the foreword for this book. And I'm really grateful to be able to use these principles to encourage people on their journey. Another thing that comes out of using the 10 life values is a transformation. You find something that you want to improve upon. You find something that's a problem and you want to create a solution. And that's how A Game came about. So Dr. Holman and his team were teaching men, training men across the country and internationally, and over 1 million men have been touched by this work. And so when they did the work and they understood these principles, there was change that they made in their lives. But as he looked into their eyes, as he heard their stories, he realized that they all needed supplementation. They needed to boost their health. They weren't talking about their health issues, as men don't always do. And he saw that problem and created a solution for it. So that's what you would find, Kendra, and your audience as well, as you use these 10 life values. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a solution to some problem, maybe it's fulfilling that purpose that you're called to, but never really had yourself in balance enough to go after it. But whatever it is, it's a beautiful personal experience that happens once you engage in the 10 life values.
Exactly. And once again, you said so many key things. I think one of the most important things that I want to bring out that you did say was that it wasn't about perfection, it was about excellence.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring that out to my audience. The 10 life values really is not about being perfect in your life. It's not, because no one's life is perfect. No one's life is ever going to be perfect. However, it is about reaching and living beyond survival mode, because so many of us are just surviving, and that's not really living. That's existing. That's going back to something I think you said about being reactionary rather than planning your life. And just life happens to you and you got to go with the flow and you don't really know what to do. And you just have to figure it out as you go. And that's a really haphazard way to live or to survive, because many of us have not gotten to a point of living. And I always make a distinction between surviving and living. Something that's surviving will almost do anything in order to preserve their lives. And they don't understand things about quality of life, because their quality of life is low because they're just trying to survive each day. They're just going paycheck to paycheck. They're just is living in their apartment and afraid that they're going to get evicted and, these types of things. So the 10 life values isn't here to make it perfect. It's here to help you improve and move beyond a survival mechanism and go into living. Because as my audience is listening, there are probably those of you who've got your health together, you've got your education together, but you might not have your profession together. You might not have your mobility together. Some of you have your dwelling together, but your spiritual is, in flux, and you're not really sure what to do there. Maybe you've got your profession and your leisure and your wealth, but your health is questionable. You've got some things going on health-wise that you haven't addressed. So each one of us has our strengths and weaknesses, especially when we start dividing our lives up into these 10 life values, these 10 sections, and begin to really take a look at our lives. And that's another thing that the 10 life values helps us to do, is actually compartmentalize our lives instead of taking it as one whole and saying, okay, well, I've got money, so I don't need anything else. I've got money, but I'm 300 pounds, but I don't need to worry about that because I got money. Like, it doesn't work that way. Once we start looking at our lives in this way, we start being able to say, okay, this is where I need to shore up. This is where I need to improve. Okay, this part is okay. This part is fine. Maybe I can improve there, but I'm not too worried about that. So you might have 6 of the 10 okay, and then the other 4 you need to work on. So it really just depends. It's a personal thing, as Dr. Michelle said. This is a really personal journey almost that we get to go on, because even before I knew what 10 life values were, this is something that I've been trying to implement in my life also. It's just that, once I met Dr. Holman, it was like, oh, that has a name.
Right.
that has a name, right? And I'm struck to it like it's awesome. But because my spiritual is really good, but my health I'm working on. And I pride myself on being transparent with my audience. My health I'm working on. Everybody knows I'm doing keto and losing weight, which I've lost like 12 pounds in like a month. Kudos to me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, I take pride in my appearance. When I go places, I'm looking nice. I'm not, my hygiene isn't a problem. And, all of these other like things like, ooh, what's going on with your appearance, baby? You can't go outside looking like that. You can't do it, and things of that nature. So, my dwelling has improved over the years. I no longer live in places where it's like, okay, I don't want to invite people because, I don't want them to see the outside place of where I live. Like the inside is clean and it's nice, but then you got to walk through this to get to there. So I no longer am, in that state. So just when I took a look at my personal life, especially after the 10 life values was introduced to me in this structure, I was like, oh, okay. There are some things, and I knew there were things to work on, but now there's a name to it. There's a title to it. There's a direction for it. There's a focus for it, rather than it being some nebulous thing that I know needs work, but I don't know how to work on it, and I don't know how to get to it. I don't know what to say about it or what to do about it. The 10 life values actually provides an overall structure for taking your life in small parts and examining each individual thing and seeing where you need improvement. And it's not about bashing anyone or saying, oh, you suck in this area. It's not about that either. It's personal. You don't even have to share it with anyone. Just say, okay, this is what I need to do. And this is how I can work on this. I need to focus on my education. If you're in my audience and you're an adult, but you need your GED, then education is probably something that you would focus on. Maybe you never got that, and maybe it's not your fault. But at some point, you can say, okay, let me arrange my life in such a way where this becomes a priority for me. And then once I cover that, maybe I can move on to the other parts of my life, the other values, and see how I can improve those also.
Yes, absolutely. So well said. Really the power of the 10 life values is in how precise it is, but also how pliable, how customizable it is to our lives. And the great ability there is that's built into it to accommodate all the randomness that happens in life. Really, the randomness that comes from our choices, and the more we get in tuned with our values, we'll see changes in the decisions around these choices that we make, and know that life is ever shifting, right? That's the thing about life. It's ever shifting, but with the 10 life values, we have the system, we have the order, we have the structure that allows us to really process through all of these key areas of our lives. And if we keep our eyes on this, we won't be deficit. We won't lose sight of the areas that need to be focused on. So when I say we won't have deficits in terms of being intentional about focusing in an area, we might need to grow an area where there are deficits, but because we are consciously aware and working in each area, there will be progress. We will move closer and closer. We'll see if our decisions are getting us closer or further away from our goals, because really the end point is to fulfill that which we're called to. And where we are right now, we need to find a bridge to get to where we ought to be, where we're going. And I see the 10 life values as doing that. The other amazing thing about the 10 life values for me is that the 10 life values helps you to never give up on yourself. Never give up on yourself. Even when everything around you tells you that you should, when everything around you says, you're nothing, you're nobody, and you keep hearing these messages constantly, because the 10 life values are built upon a really solid foundation of biology, culture, and environment. And our environment is filled with messages, starting from what we hear at home to what we hear in popular media or social media and the news. We just really are impressionable and are bombarded with lots of messages. So our value system helps us to navigate through all of these messages. And our culture, the practices, the rituals, the things that we hold in high regard in our culture, again, coming from our family and so on. I am originally from the Caribbean, so I consider myself bicultural. The American culture, the Caribbean culture, bringing all those together, it makes a difference. There is impact in what our cultural experiences are. And then our biology. So our biology affords us the capacity to filter out, to select out from our environment and our cultural practices the things that allow us to focus in on what our moral compass is. So what we deem valuable, what we deem as worthy, that will guide us, is really important depending on our age. So our biology will influence our capacity to understand and accept and assimilate a lot of this, depending on where we are in our lifespan. And so it is truly remarkable to know that there is the system that can absorb us regardless of where we are. And we spent a lot of time talking about the compartments of the 10 life values, from spiritual to wealth, and we needed to do that. But what I want to do is to bring it back and talking about how it helps us to never give up on ourselves, how it allows us to keep dreaming and fulfilling those dreams that tend to die so easily when our environment doesn't support our vision and our growth for ourselves, right? So the other side of the coin is that not only are these compartmented parts important, but we ought to find the connections between all of these compartments. And in finding the connections, so for instance, wealth, you need money to pursue your spiritual development, whether it's buying books or buying things that help you to connect your own personal growth spiritually, or you need you need money for your health, insurance, and having good food, and all the things that are needed to work out and all of that. And we can go through and we'll see how wealth is important for family and for appearance and dwelling and mobility and education and profession and even for leisure, right? All of those we can see how they get connected. And then the next phase is to look at the whole. Look at the whole picture. So we break it down into compartments, we look at the connected parts, and then we look at the whole. Why? Because really, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. What do I mean by that? It means that if you think about baking a cake, or actually, Kendra, in your case, cookies. I know you make cookies for your channel. Let's think about cookies. All the parts, all the composite parts are important. They're distinctive and they're unique, and without them, your cookie will not be the cookie that it needs to be. So you need eggs and flour and butter and other ingredients, spices, depending on what you want in there. Maybe it's chocolates that you include, or raisins, or whatever. All of those parts are critically important. They need to be good quality. They need to, be healthy and taste good and add to the overall flavor and goodness of that cookie. Now, when you mix them all together, you find, and they come connected, and you're going through the process of putting these together, you end up with something that's greater than flour and eggs and butter and all your other ingredients, because a cookie is now something different and distinct than all the ingredients, but all the ingredients went into making that amazing cookie. So the whole of it is greater than if we even summed all the parts together. So we need the parts. We need to keep our eyes focused on each part, but we also need to understand how they work together, when to put the sugar in with the flour and the butter and the connections, and then we can realize the goodness of that whole picture, that whole cookie, that wholesomeness of our lives. And in doing so, we'll see that we are whole. We might have experiences that were broken in some areas, but we are inherently whole because we have all of these ingredients, we have all of these components, and we just need to work on putting them back together, bringing in that homeostasis, that balance in our lives. And that's the power, that's the beauty of the 10 life values. If I may, I can illustrate this with a story as well, but I wanted to share that with the audience and hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. I like your cookie analogy because it's very appropriate to what we're saying. Because, if you want to bake a good cookie, you can't start with the flour and then add an egg and then add the butter, because the order in which it is added affects the outcome of what you want. So if I started with flour and then wanted to add some butter, I probably end up with a pie crust more than I would a cookie. So even if I were to add the rest of the ingredients haphazardly, probably not going to end up with a very good end product. And so I'm glad that you even brought up the biology, cultural, and environment aspect of this, because that's actually a natural buildup. From our biology comes culture. Because biology breaks down into our moral code, like you said, our moral compass. And then that actually builds into our culture, which can be broken down into our ethics. And then that building block is the foundation for the environment, which is the sum total of its parts. And like we were talking about before, the family unit being the individual component part of a society. Like, you don't have a civilization without some form of family units that create the communities, that create the cities, that create the, so one thing builds upon another, just like the 10 life values. And I think that's why it works so well because the buildup is so natural. It's
Right.
so natural to how we live as people, not necessarily this type of person or that type of person, but people. We live a certain way, and we want to do things a certain way. And so even though the 10 life values are placed one above another in a specific order to achieve a specific goal, it's not that we're not maybe working on 2 or 3 or 4 of them at once, that we have to do, because the goal isn't to just have one of these values intact, but to have all of them intact so that the actual quality of our lives is improved overall. And it needs all of those things, just like the cookie needs all of the ingredients.
Yes.
In order to be the cookie, you need all of the ingredients of the 10 life values in order to have the quality of life that we really deserve.
Absolutely. And, additionally, the 10 life values will help us prepare for life at home and life outside the home. So we're really prepared for all that is before us. And if you think about these 10 broken into 2 columns, so the first column starts with spiritual and ends with dwelling. The second column begins with education and ends with wealth. Everything in the second column really has an external component to it. We think about dwelling, that's the nurturance where we live, grow, develop, where we encourage each other. The moment we step outside our homes, we're hitting the mobility value. We think about George Floyd and what happened to him tragically. That happened, his death, his demise happened in the mobility value. It happened external to the safety of our dwelling, of our home. So when you are in the mobility value, you are regulated, you are governed by the rules, the regulation. You talked about environment, but that's the law, that's the legalities of how we are treated, how we ought to carry ourselves and behave, and the consequences as a result of that. So education primarily happens outside the home as well, except now with the pandemic, that's changed a little bit. Professional, so typically outside the home. But and leisure, we tend to do leisurely things outside the home as well. So the 10 life values, when you really start to break it down, you gain this understanding of how it helps you as a person, how it helps you prepare for life within your family and those closely connected to you, as well as prepare you for life in the mobility value. And this system was built upon research. Initially, after it really created change that was realized in the life of the creator of this 10 life value system. He tested it out. He actually did research on over 5,100 men, and analyzing that data, looking at that study, confirmed that the men who were successful in their lives had a system of value. They built their lives on value. And that really propelled all of this coming together in the system and making it available for anyone to participate in it. And so from the judicial system to universities and schools and churches and many community level entities, people from all walks of life over the past 20 plus years have been able to engage in the 10 life values. It's pretty powerful to know that the judicial system recognized the power of this and said, we need men who need great support to come through this system. And that churches, not just 20 years ago, but today, right now, have as a critical core of what they offer their congregation is the 10 life values in one form or another of their programs. So when you think about all of this happening around you, know that it can happen to you and with you by engaging in, by making the decision to embrace the 10 life values and allow it to infiltrate your life, allow it to help you examine your life, see where you are, see what your next steps need to be, and where you're going. And that's one of the amazing things of this. And I hope your audience sees themselves in the 10 life values.
I'm going to make sure they see themselves, because we're going to be talking about this because it's so important that I can't imagine that anyone can't see themselves in one way or another, how this applies to them and how this applies to, their lives, their personal situations, things of that nature, because it's such a free flow, or rather than free flow, it's a natural thing. It's the way we live. It really is
the way we live.
And it being implemented, as you said, in schools and the judicial system in churches, just speaks to the dynamic nature of it, that it can be expanded to fit maybe an organization, and then it can be compressed to fit an individual. And I think that's also one of the more beautiful things about these 10 life values.
Absolutely.
But, I'm not going to hold you too long, but is there anything else that you'd like to say to the audience today?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to share a story, because I think it will really bring a conversation home for a lot of folks who might be listening to this. I spoke just about a week ago. I spoke with a gentleman who is a minister. He is a doctor. He does a lot of counseling with folks. But when you are helping others, it's easy to offer the tools and processes and the help that other people need. It's not so easy always to help yourself. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because we're looking at other people in their own frame, in the frame of their life. When you are in the frame, it's more difficult to see what's in the frame unless you have a mirror up and you look kind of an outer body experience to come apart and see yourself in that frame. That's what the 10 life values does. It allows for this level of examination to see your own self. Mm-hmm. And so this gentleman I was talking to, he called me up. He said, Dr. Michelle, I'm having a problem with my wife. I just realized, I found out, really discovered that she was cheating on me. And, I'm totally devastated. I don't believe in divorce. I don't know how to approach her. I'm not sure what to do about this. While I help a lot of people, I'm not sure what to do for myself. So I chatted with him a bit. I said, tell me a little bit more about what's happening in your life in general. And he couldn't see past the cheating, the unfaithfulness, the infidelity, the betrayal. That was all that absorbed his energy and his life. And I said, no, please do share what's happening in your family, in your home on a daily basis. And when he started talking, I realized that there was an incredible disconnect with him and his wife. They didn't pray as much as they used to, at least not together. She was heavily involved in her profession as a nurse. He helped her along that educational journey from becoming a CNA to LPN to a RN, and now she's working 2 jobs, making really good money, and she felt like there was a way she could use that money, and one of those ways was to buy a new car without consulting her husband. And so when she decided to do that, she got $70,000 in cash and bought a brand new luxury vehicle. He didn't know about it until he saw it at the house, and he said, I think we're doing okay, but I'm not so sure that our budget can sustain that, right now. And she totally disregarded his concerns. The daughter who left home went out into her own life. She came back home now with a baby. The teenage daughter, the other daughter, who is trying to figure out her life and wanted her parental support, she only got it from her dad, who went on a trip with her. And so it was while they were away that he discovered what was happening with his wife, with someone else. He actually used the daughter who was home to look at her activities, and there was a tracking device on the vehicle, and all of these things he started getting into. There was a lot of distrust, and communication was poor. And as he's talking to me, I said to him, do you realize that as you talk about the big picture of your life, what you're experiencing on a daily basis, that you are really addressing every area of your 10 life values? And he says, really? Show me. And as I started breaking it down for him, the silence was deafening. He had some epiphanies, and he could not believe right in front of him, as he started to compartmentalize his life, how clear things were becoming. So I said to him, you need to address problems in your spiritual value. You guys are not experiencing love or sharing, giving love or receiving love. There isn't that respect or that coming together and praying and connecting with each other and your source of divinity. Then there's health. He said that his wife, because she's working so much, she's not sleeping well. So now she's taking sleeping pills, which make her really angry sometimes, very erotic at other times. And there was all of this range of emotions. Certainly, we see the family dynamics. There are lots of problems there. And appearance, he mentioned that the wife was now becoming more interested in how she looked. She was spending a lot of money on her clothes and her makeup and hair and so on. And we know why. There was a new interest in her life. And so that part of her life took on more meaning, more value. And the dwelling, there was a lot of problems in the home. The cheating happened at home, in their bed, in the master bedroom. So, problems there. Then there was the mobility piece, which is the vehicle, the car. Then the education, she wanted more education. Profession, she was working 2 jobs, no time for the family. He was working multiple jobs as well, and they wanted to advance in life. Leisure, she was doing her own thing, and he was doing his own thing, which resulted in some problems. And wealth, their wealth was affected by the money being used in all these different areas. So for the first time, he realized, wow, the mess of my life is actually more understandable now. Now I can see where the problems are. Now I can see what I need to address. Now I have more hope in knowing that it's more manageable, it's organized. I can, take a bite
There's a path forward, and being this cloud of things that he can't address, and that he doesn't know how to address, and that there's no way forward for him to address. And
absolutely. Yeah. And so that was an epiphany for him. And I know it probably is for your audience hearing this story as well. What I want to leave with everyone is that there is more available to you. There's another story about a young man who was 33, struggling to find community. And he found the gangs of LA, but then he was fortunate to find community leaders who took an interest in him and pointed him to the 10 life values. I'm happy to share that story with you. It's actually in a book Dr. Holman wrote with Jim Britt and Kevin Harrington from the Shark Tank, and with Tony Robbins, who's a well-known motivational speaker. So if you go to agame.com, use Kendra's link, go there, click on Contact Us, and send me a message. I'll be happy to send that book chapter within this book collaboration that Dr. Holman did. And there's another book, if you'd like to get it, it's called The Change. And this book actually has a really good description of the 10 life values. This is another book collaboration that was done with Jim Britt, Jim Lutz. And these are big names in the personal development, personal performance space, motivational speaking space. It's all about being your best, you. And so this work of the 10 life values is really fitting in this space because there's nothing quite like it available. So if you'd like any of those resources, I'd love to send them to you and connect with you that way. So be sure to send a message on the agameherbal.com site. Contact us and let me know that you'd like to have it.
All right. Well, I would like to thank you so much for giving us your time today, Dr. Michelle, and helping us to introduce this very, very important set of values and concepts to my audience. I really appreciate you taking the time out today to do that for us. So thank you very much.
You're so welcome, Kendra. It's my pleasure. I'm truly honored to be here and represent this work and to have a conversation with you. And my hope and prayer is that lives were touched and we continue to do this good work together.
I pray that as well. And I think we will touch a lot of people. So what I'd like to do with you guys is I would like for you to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, go into the description box and hit the link for A-Game at agameherbal.com. Get your 10% discount using the code Kendra10. And this has been yet another Crimson Cure production. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Good night.
Good night.